Another radio on Ralph's bench. This is a Bosch DAC 90A, and I can only thank Paul Kemp for this because he sold it to me, and it does run, it does fire up. The only thing with it is it's got a fair bit of distortion and buzzing with it, and that will be because the capacitors in it are the old wax and paper ones, and they would have gone way out of tolerance, and that's why you get those noises. But at the same time, I shall also have to go along the resistor chain as well, and try and make this safe. Well, try and make the set too many S's. Try and make the set safe because these are live chassis. I may yet fit a transformer to it so that we get an isolated chassis. But in the shorter term, what I want to do is get it up and running first. Obviously, all the valves are all right because there's plenty of volume out of it. Just needs the component sorting. Now, if we look at the back, it is exactly the same as a Bosch DAC 10, albeit cramped in a smaller space. But yeah, it'll need quite a bit of work. It needs a really good clean, and then we'll unscrew the chassis with these couple of screws and we'll pull it out. But this, I know the purists want to keep these things. Probably what I will do is unscrew this plug. Odd way round to do this, isn't it, really? Because the trouble is, you can, depending on which way you've got it plugged, the chassis is live or it's not live. It's not great, so we'll rewire this so that at least it's correct on the plug. And probably what I'll do is unscrew that. I shall make a new plate for that with a cord grip through it, and that'll be the end of that. But otherwise, everything looks pretty much okay. It's never been worked on. That much is evident, and that's always pleasing to see, to be honest. I'd rather have one that was untouched, you know. So I've got a fair bit of work to do, clean the chassis, but it's only dust. Look, under there we've got shiny metal. So we live in hope, don't we? But it really needs a good de-dusting, and I think Paul has at some point cleaned the case. Yeah, he has. Yeah, you can tell it's a bit of a giveaway. Yeah, Bakelite case in the days before plastics, or as my lad said, it's all made out of crushed beetles. I'm not so sure about that. But yeah, he's probably got a point. Yeah, as usual, the same old setup. There's no transformer in it. You just got a massive resistor to drop the voltage down to what the set needs, which is something like, I think it's 190 and 6 volt or something like that. But anyway, we'll have to work through all the values of these and make sure they're all within tolerance. But firstly, I shall have to work on the underside and replace all the capacitors. Lucky enough, I've bought a whole new batch. I don't know why. It must have been deja vu. I thought, I've used a lot of those. I'll order some more. And just as well I have, because I'm going to have to do this one. But yeah, a nice little radio. Very much liked the Bosch DAC 90. It's a cute little radio, isn't it, with its two knobs on the front. You got on, you've got your tuning on the top. Can't even see the dial. Yeah, well, you can't really without bulbs in it. But it may need a dial cord on it, I don't know. But yeah, that's my next radio project. Just to show that not everything is fun and roses, I've got this radio in for repair, and I don't know how to describe this, but when the parcel arrived, I could smell it from about 3 feet away. It stunk, absolutely stunk, and I've been spending the morning cleaning this radio from top to bottom with, well, I can't use too strong a cleaner, but certainly it's had the Dettol treatment. But honestly, I don't know how to describe the smell. It smells like it's come out of an old person's home that's died in it. That's what it smells like. Or they may have slumped over this radio when they went, I don't know. Honestly, it absolutely hums. It's getting better now since I've cleaned it, but I have to keep putting all the wet wipes in bags and throwing them out. It's vile. But I wanted to take out time to talk about cables. Cables in engine bays on a T25. But I also restore old valve radios, and actually this bridges both. It applies to both of those. Now, normally when you get a T25, you inherit it. You buy it second hand. Very, very few people, in fact I've never met anyone, bought a T25 from new and have had it since. It just doesn't seem to happen, does it? And in the early days, we're talking 1990s. Before that, I was always into Beatles and bays, you know, right through the 1980s. But in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, I could pick up a T25 for 50 quid, 150 quid, £500 tops. Hard to believe, isn't it, really? But usually when you open up the engine bay, you'll find cables like this, and all the bodges that go with it. But the trouble is, with using PVC cable, although it's quite nice stuff to work with, it is not immensely tolerant of huge swings in temperature. And when you consider that an engine bay, when you're pelting down the motorway, can get incredibly hot, and then you park it up, and then you get a freezing cold night, and the roads are all iced up. You know, these are extremes of temperature, aren't they? And this stuff really doesn't cope with it very well. And what happens after a time is it gets really hard and brittle. Yeah, familiar with it? Well, I've got a solution for that. So let's set this aside for a minute. And it's this stuff. You see how that's braided? This isn't cable. This is tubing, and it's 3mm. See, it's hollow. The great thing about this is you can thread your cable through this, and if you put your terminals on right, you can actually just catch the outer end of this in your spade terminal. But the point is, this is high temperature resistant. It also is insulation, and it does seem to be able to take, you know, rubbing on various things. You know, it's quite yeah, it's anti-abrasive. I use it a lot, and I've been using it for years, but I just, you know, I thought, well, I'll pass this one on, because when you're rewiring an engine bay, you know, if you're finicky, then I highly recommend you use this stuff. And I use it a lot in valve radios, because they didn't really use PVC, well, they didn't use PVC cable in the 1930s. They tended to use this a sort of braided cloth cable, tubing like this, with a copper core going right down the middle of it. And when I'm restoring radios, I will do that sometimes, just put the raw cable through it. But what you can do is this, and here's one I did earlier. There we go, and I've just threaded that cable, see, all the way through it. And so that means you've got your cables better protected from all the swings in temperature. It's much easier to deal with, and it is also available in primary colours. The colours are getting harder to get. It's certainly available in black and white. You can get that easy enough, but it should be available in red, yellow, green and blue. They're the other colours. So when you come to wiring up your engine bay, and you want to renew all your cables, don't just do it with this PVC cable stuff, because it's not going to last forever. Get some proper sleeving on it, and it's only a couple of quid a metre, something like that. But if you want to find it, you look on eBay for silicon fibre braided tube. That should find it, or glass fibre braided tube, or tubing. And it all seems to come from China. That's where they seem to make it. But it's glass fibre woven and coated in silicon. Excellent stuff. Brilliant properties for an engine bay, and just as good in an old valve radio. Hope that helps someone. I don't know what the time is. 11:30 on a Tuesday night, and I am cleaning out the insides of this DAC 90A. It's going to take quite a while. Always does cleaning, and it's the first thing you've got to do before you even think of tackling the capacitors in this thing and resistors. I've got a fair few to do. Certainly that one Looks a bit worse for wear. I've got to be careful cleaning the valves. I'm not even sure I want to clean them with wet wipes because it will tend to take the numbers off if you're not careful. But if we just flip this up this way, oh, that's a good angle. There. Now this is what I mean by paper and wax capacitors, because that's exactly what that's exactly how they're made. If you imagine a strip of paper, and on top of that a strip of foil, and then the whole thing is rolled up and then coated in wax with a wire each end for the connectors. But unfortunately these aren't so bad. These are capacitors as well, but they don't tend to drift so much. But these certainly do, and anything that's going across the 240 volts. I've also got to check this. That should be 32 nanofarad and 16 nanofarad, which again means nothing to you, does it? But yeah, I've got most of these components. I did buy a few recently, so and I've also got a spare volume switch if I have troubles with it, but this one actually seems alright. But gosh, it is dirty, and I'm not blaming the previous owner for that. This is over several, well, decades of dirt in here. The underside of the chassis is not so bad, but the top, yeah, it's absolutely filthy. But I said to Paul, who I bought this from, that I would keep him updated on the status. But look, see this is just dust, you know, and you've got to rub quite hard at it to get it off because it's stuck. That's because there's so much in the way of wax in this thing, and possibly nicotine in its previous life. That would do it. It kind of leaves a sticky coating on everything, and then the dust sticks to that. But I think it's in my favour because now the dust is being cleaned off. It's quite clean underneath. So that's what we've got to do, keep doing that. I've also, this is the lamp dials. I'm pretty sure the bulbs have gone, but I'm going to check the voltages on the bulb line because they're run separately. But what I did do is and this isn't plastic, this is celluloid. That kind of dates it, doesn't it? But that fits, if I can get this in. Over that, the bulbs light this up from behind, and then on top of that is the dials. It's really difficult with valve radios. I've got to say this because when I was a kid, you know, medium wave was pretty chocker. You know, you go down that listening to Radio Luxembourg and all of that sort of stuff. There's almost nothing on it now. Long wave, there's nothing at all. So, you know, this is the problem when you've got AM and long wave sets. You know, you restore them, but there's actually nothing to listen to on them. You know, I like what Ray at the Radio Workshop suggested. He said, get yourself a small medium wave transmitter, plug it into an FM radio, and then you can send it to this. But that means you kind of got two radios going, just so you can hear something in this one. I have got a very early, I think it's 1931 or 1932 radio, and the chassis in that was so awful I just didn't bother. But what I did do is keep the case, and my plan with that is to actually fit modern guts inside it. But to all intents and purposes, it will look like a 1930s radio on the outside. The only difference it'll be a lot safer because you won't have such high voltages inside it like these are. These are, you know, you've got fair voltage. You can kill yourself with one of these. Yeah, and put an FM. Okay, maybe FM and medium wave bands, and you know, fit a transistor guts in it. But I can't really do that with this. You know, it's really, this has got to be put back to the way it was. But my thinking is, get this function, get this chassis all cleaned up, get it all working, and then maybe, this is just a thought I had the other day, is make a wooden plinth very similar to this, put the pots on it, you know, the potentiometers, volume, tune and all the rest of it, and build a transistor circuit on it, or even an integrated chip, and slide that in the case. So that way you keep the original chassis, that's all working, that's all restored, but the radio you can actually use because you can tune it into FM. Yeah, you can see where I'm coming from, can't you, really? Because I do love restoring them, but this is the drawback with it, that you know, with DAB and internet radio, is radio stations are disappearing. It's just a fact. Anyway, I shall continue getting the dust out of this thing. I'm going to be here for a couple of hours. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.